Welcome to This Week in Australia. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm not going to roll the intro today because, out of respect for the tragedy that occurred in Australia this week, it just doesn't fit the vibe. You know, it's a bit of a cheery intro. Not a cheery week in Australia, so. But with that said, I am excited to get back to the regularly scheduled programming next week. Although, of course, if there is any news about any updates on the horrible tragedy at Bondi, I'll be covering that, of course. And I suspect a lot of these posts will be about the attack. So let's get to it. The top post this week in r/Australia. Bernie Sanders on Bondi. Okay, this should be interesting. And this has almost 50,000 upvotes. Holy shit. Let's see. 17 innocent people were murdered in a horrific anti-Semitic. 17. I mean, obviously, I've heard 16, but that's including the gunman, which I wouldn't include that when I say, you know, innocent people were murdered. Obviously, he's not included. But even then, still, where did he get 17? It was 15. Anyway, murdered in a horrific anti-Semitic terrorist attack in Sydney. Together, we must do everything we can to combat the alarming rise of anti-Semitism around the world. What was Prime Minister Netanyahu's response to this tragedy? He blamed the Australian Prime Minister for the attack simply because he had moved to recognize a Palestinian state. Yikes. Yeah, I definitely would not blame Anthony Albanese for a terrorist attack. But that's getting very political. No, Mr. Netanyahu, speaking out on behalf of Palestinian people is not anti-Semitic. Opposing the disgraceful policies of your extremist government is not anti-Semitic. Condemning your genocidal war, which has killed more than 70,000 people, mostly women and children, is not anti-Semitic. Demanding that your government stop bombing hospitals and starving children is not anti-Semitic. As we mourn the tragic loss of life in Australia, we must continue to vigorously oppose anti-Semitism and all forms of racism and bigotry. At the same time, we must demand a world in which international law and human rights are respected by all governments, without exception. Wow. That's a very powerful statement. Also interesting because Bernie is Jewish. And I think this might be upvoted so much in part because a lot of people, myself included, are just sick of everybody trying to divide everybody and tear us all apart with labels and stuff. I like that he acknowledges, yes, this was an anti-Semitic Islamic terrorist attack. He doesn't say Islamic, but of course, I mean, that's what it was, against Jewish people. But at the same time, you are able to condemn that fact and condemn what's going on in Gaza, or happened in Gaza. You are able to do both those things. I mean, honestly, I have never understood why people have an issue condemning, like, why is it hard to condemn the Hamas attack on October 7th? Innocent Jewish people murdered. Condemn when military negligently, or, I mean, I'm not even saying, I don't know, but negligently, at best, kill innocent people, condemn innocent people dying at the hands of mass shooters. It's all bad. 300,000 raised via GoFundMe for hero Ahmed, who of course disarmed the gunman. I can't talk today. Anyway, I have a feeling this is much higher now than 300,000. 700,000. I think it's higher than that. Holy shit! Look at all this. 3 million, or 2.6 million. That's what it's at right now for Ahmed. And then for Matilda, they have raised 870,000 for her family. And then so many others. Oh my gosh. Sophia and Boris, 700,000. Huge shout out to all the people donating to these very important causes. I did hear that Bill Ackman was in here donating a bunch of money. There it is. William Ackman. I had heard it was $99,000. I think he did it for like all of them. So that's pretty cool. Shout out to Bill Ackman. Sorry, I only laugh at the thought that Bill Ackman would care that I shouted him out. You know, shout out Bill Ackman. He's like, hey, did you see Ryan Was shouted me out? He's a billionaire hedge fund dude, by the way. Hopefully the money actually goes to the dude. A random GoFundMe set up by a car company is not particularly standard path. With a GoFundMe this big, with small ones, that is a real concern. But with one this big, they step in and make sure it goes to the right people. They made the first 50K donation, and billionaire Bill Ackman put the 100K, stating that he has confirmation that GoFundMe will not release the funds to anyone other than Ahmed Al. There we go. And here's the Ahmed Al appreciation thread, but I already went through that in a video a few days ago. And here's the first post, the first anything Australian I've seen in a long time, not about the tragedy, which almost feels like I almost forgot that you could do that. But let's see. Missed one Coles. A frickin' Coles post. Of course, that's the first one. Not about the tragedy. Let's see. Down, 650. What's going on here? Over 1 billion in profit thanks to Oh, this is actually a real sticker. I assumed this was AI, which is also kind of funny to me because like people say that now, including me, as if Photoshop didn't exist for the last, 30, 40 years. But yeah, I assumed this was AI, but I guess this is an actual sticker people are printing out and putting. Oh my God. I can't help but be curious though, since this can of worms was opened, and it's a very common subject, to look at a little bit more of their financials from Kohl's. At least try to figure out their net profit margin. So their net profit margin is 2.43%. Of course, that's counting executive pay as an expense. So it looks like 0.36% of total revenue goes toward executive pay. Put another way, if you took out all of Kohl's profit margin and paid all the executives $0, that would lower prices about 2.7%. All Aussie teens denied entry into the U.S. after being unable to provide 5 years of social media history. Wait, that's actually a good point. I mean, I get that this is a satirical article, but how does that work? Because in the U.S., I guess they're going to start trying to screen people's social media history before letting them into the country. With, I guess, the goal must be to plummet already plummeting tourism to the United States, just plummet it even further until it's zero. But the Australian teens don't have social media anymore, so how does that work? Social media bans need lifted so Aussie teens can enter the USA. Won't someone think of the kiddies? Yes, we only allow brain-rotted kids addicted to social media into the USA. Wow, this is some serious whiplash this week, going from Bondi subject to these random silly subjects, back now to the Bondi. But okay, heroic woman who'd been shot saves a family's 3-year-old girl in the middle of Wait, she had been shot? Is this the same woman that I had already looked at? Because I saw that video and you can hear the woman comforting the girl. I don't know if this is a different instance. It very well might be. Either that or that woman was shot and comforting the girl. Either way, that did happen, which is unbelievable. Fingers crossed we remember details like this and not the scum's names that did it. Interestingly, I already forgot both their names. Oh wow, I guess they delivered his check in person from GoFundMe.
Isaac.
Ahmed,
How are you?
it's a pleasure to meet you.
Good to see you, my friend.
Can I give you a hug?
Of course, my friend.
Love you. I came here with news of people around the world. 43,000 people.
Thank you very much.
They raised you $2.5 million.
I deserve it.
Every penny.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
If you could say one thing to the people that donated, what would you tell them?
Stand to each other, all a human being, and put everything back behind the back.
Wow.
We're going to save.
That's quite a message. I have a hard time doing that, but yeah, that's coming from a dude who was shot. That is a pretty powerful message.
We're going to save life. Ozzy, Ozzy, Ozzy. Isaac.
Ahmed.
That's pretty freaking awesome. Honestly, thank God we do have these incredible hero stories out of this event that are shining such a brighter light coming out of it on the other side of it than the darkness that those two attempted to spread. I mean, it's really amazing. There's Ahmed's shop. How cool is that? I can't wait to see some video from his first day back to the fruit stand, man. Look at that. We are so very proud of you from Sutherland Residence 2025. Here's a photo of Constable Scott Dyson, one of the 2 New South Wales police officers who were injured in the Bondi shooting. Obviously, hoping for a full recovery for this legend. You really can't forget about all the injured people, 40 plus injured people. Unfortunately, the damage isn't just in those who died. It's in all the people who are not just traumatized, but also physically, potentially permanently scarred, and some may be disabled permanently from their injuries, which is just horrible. Okay, now this is an element of this whole situation that I have been very interested in. Of course, famously in response to the Port Arthur massacre, huge amount of gun reform in Australia. And I was wondering, would the same thing happen after this? And it looks like, to some extent, yes, there are new gun laws being proposed, at least. Which I must say, as an American, that's pretty remarkable. Because, I mean, no matter what happens here in America, it seems like it's pretty much not even considered, it's not even a thought. Wow, all states and territories have already agreed to develop new options to strengthen gun laws. Okay, so it would limit the maximum number of guns allowed to be owned by one person, limiting the types of guns deemed legal. I mean, that's vague, but I'd be interested to hear more details on that. And making holding Australian citizenship a condition of holding a gun license. Okay, so right now you don't have to be a citizen, which you don't have to be a citizen here in America either. It's just, you can't just be like a tourist or something. You have to, I think you have to be a permanent resident here in America. I guess that's also the way it was in Australia, but that will change. Yes, of course, people can be radicalized over a period of time. Yes, that's a very important thing to recognize, of course, in the laws. Evidently, and of course, everybody knows just because you're approved and pass a background and psychological test 10 years ago or even 5 years ago doesn't mean today you are, can be trusted with a gun. Or I should say, it doesn't mean that today you would pass the test. It's kind of like driving, like here in America. There's people who, sadly, as they age, 90 years old, driving around, they got their license when they're 16 years old. It's like, you would not pass the test anymore. Like, I'm sorry. That's sad, but, at some point, people need to be retested on things like that. Governments will look to put further restrictions on importation of guns, including 3D printed weapons. I'm sorry, but what does that even mean? What do import restrictions have to do with 3D printed weapons? Considering the entire idea of a 3D printed weapon is that it doesn't need to be imported. It can be created in a freaking bedroom. Now, of course, not all the components of a 3D printed gun can be 3D printed. It's not like you can make a gun fully out of plastic. So I get that. I guess maybe that's what they mean. Like some of the components, the vital components, like the barrel for a 3D printed gun are going to be restricted as far as importation. This is an interesting subject. I'm really interested to read some comments on this one. Australia had the gold standard on gun control. The Bondi beach terror attack may force it to confront its surging number of weapons. That's very interesting. And honestly, it is very difficult to have an honest discussion about that subject, so I'm interested to read some comments. No law can work 100%. This law is probably the reason mass shootings are rare in Australia now. I am still for this law. See, and That is why this first sentence is why people struggle to have this conversation, because that's an unfortunate truth, you know? And it might be even more broad than what he's saying. I mean, the truth is, no matter what amount of laws are put in place, people will find a way to kill people. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't make laws. Duh. Of course not. You should make laws to try to inhibit their ability to do so. But just because once every 30 years some lunatic finds a way to get around all the laws and commit an act of violence doesn't mean that you should just not have laws. And it also doesn't necessarily mean the laws did not work entirely, you know. Like I said before, it's kind of obvious that if the weapons had been semi-automatic with high-capacity magazines, it's very likely there would have been more deaths. And of course, it's all a balancing act. It's a huge, very difficult balancing act between freedom, security, practicality. I just want to say to be wary in this thread, there are a lot of American accounts commenting with a clear agenda. Division has caused this horrific tragedy. True. Australians come together in the face of crisis, as you should. Let's not flame hate here on behalf of the Second Amendment. What does the Second Amendment of America have to do with Australia? Yep, the Yanks can keep their Second Amendment to themselves. Let the rest of the civilized world take care of ourselves. We've done quite well so far, and this is just a very unfortunate blip in what has been world-leading gun control in this country. Hold on. I need to find these comments now. How do I do that? What are these Americans saying? Okay, I've sorted by controversial to try to find these comments. I don't know how to know. So far, I have not been able to find any that are necessarily from Americans. It's just the typical type of, retorts and talking points. Like, should we ban cars as well? What's to stop someone from ramming into a crowd? That's a very common argument. To be honest, gun control laws are more so effective at that is just one angry person shooting someone else, whether, in a fit of rage, and it's because they had a gun, easy access to a gun on them, or they want to murder someone, and guess what? It's really easier to do that when you have a gun. That's where Australia's gun control has really shined. There's very low amount of gun deaths and a lower homicide in general because guns are so effective at, being a weapon of homicide. Now, it is true that if someone decides they want to kill a bunch of innocent random people, that is a more difficult issue because indeed they can just get a truck, they can rent a truck and drive it through a crowd. It's true. Okay, I'm going to be honest. I have spent a significant amount of time searching for keywords in this, like USA, America, Second Amendment. And the only comments I've found are people like anti-America stuff. So I'm genuinely trying to find the Americans in this thread that are saying this shit, and I'm sure they exist somewhere, but I can't find them. It's either that or people are conflating, standard anti-gun control arguments with Americans, which, once again, of course, there is a lot of that coming out of America, so it very well may be. Why am I still talking about this? I just realized. Oh, wow, here we go. So this is new today. I guess the Anthony Albanese just announced the largest gun buyback scheme since the Howard era. So they will reimburse gun owners who hand in surplus, newly banned, or illegal firearms under tougher gun laws being proposed. Okay. Wow. It's so interesting to be, witnessing this part of history because, like I said, I've read about and understand the history from Port Arthur and the gun buyback, but, this is a new wave of it, and it's interesting to see it unfolding. Whew. Wow. Well, that wraps up a tragic week in Australia. My heart goes out to all the victims, all those who were affected, and all of Australia. I'm sorry if anything I discussed was insensitive or anything, or if, you disagree with anything I said, that's fine. And I also, trust me, I understand I'm not even Australian, so, my opinion isn't even very relevant. I hope you guys have a good weekend. and a happy Gravy Day. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys tomorrow. I'll see you next week.